You're listening to the Digital Deep Dive, where we tackle the newest trends, strategies, and pain points shaping growth across the digital landscape. From Amazon and D2C to international expansion, join our host and e-commerce leaders across multiple industries for in-depth discussions on how to maximize your brands in the digital arena. Now, here's your host, Aaron Conant.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Digital Deep Dive. I'm your host, Aaron Conant, and today we're going to tackle the future of reviews and consumer feedback. Just got a lot of different people having this pop up over and over again. I don't think anybody's surprised. The nature of Amazon and where it's landed us with the number of reviews just going through the roof, coming in right, left. You know, there's kind of a consumer sentiment breaking in. I actually recently saw Amazon actually put basically a poll on the website while I was shopping where it says, hey, do you trust Amazon? You know, is Amazon a trusted site for you or something like that? And I thought it was odd because I haven't seen one of those before. So anyways, got a good friend, partner supporter of the network now has come, recommended from a few other friends in the space for doing some really, really cool stuff around the consumer, reviews and feedback space as a whole. Saoud, thanks for jumping on. If you want to give a brief intro on yourself, and Fakespot, that would be awesome. And then we can kind of jump into this conversation around what is the future of it? What's the current state? What's happened in the past? What should people be thinking about going forward? But anyways, we can get into that in a bit. We'd love to hear a little bit about you and the company would be awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Saoud Khalifah. I'm the founder and CEO at Fakespot. We're a consumer platform that detects fake reviews on major e-commerce websites such as Amazon. We work internationally with many different languages. We also work on Walmart, eBay, and Sephora, and millions of other Shopify stores. So we leverage AI to detect fraud as shoppers are shopping online. So we can tell you if you're about to buy a counterfeit from a third-party seller. We can also tell you if you're reading inauthentic reviews. So many people are realizing the fact that when you read reviews and then you get the product in reality, it does not match up to what the review said. And that's, kind of the crux of the problem in this space, that a lot of sales in e-commerce, this is the way it has been structured from the start by Amazon, especially in the introduction of ratings back in 1995, 1996, when they went full throttle with reviews. There was no trust factor in this digital, sphere. And the way they brought the trust factor was through reviews and ratings. When you look at other consumers writing casually what they thought about a product, that's what these, ratings elucidate kind of for you. So there's no a blanket between you and the seller. You see other people buying it, and it's kind of like a social validation for you to proceed with the purchase. Without ratings, it's very hard to get people to buy a product. And I think most sellers realize that. Unfortunately, this has opened up a Wild West in the last couple of years, where there's millions of third-party sellers fighting in between each other, trying to take over the top 5 ranking in different categories and different niches. And they unfortunately use fake reviews, either human-generated fake reviews, so where they pay off reviewers to write a review, and most of the time it's very positive reviews, but there are also sellers that buy review bumps scenarios where they actually take down the ranking of their competitors. And then we now have increasingly so bot-generated reviews. So if anyone here on the podcast actually tried using ChatGPT, very interestingly enough, OpenAI disallowed generation of recommendations or reviews for certain products. That's a very interesting kind of nugget there. So if you try asking ChatGPT, hey, write something like that, it has like a default message saying, I can't do that. So that's very interesting, because we've actually built our own transformer in-house at Fakespot that is being used by our models to train itself on AI-generated reviews, because we know that fake review farms are using this kind of technology. So in general, yes, this is a very big space and a very important space, because 90% and over consumers read reviews before buying anything, or actually reserving even anything in a service online. So this is a very important, vector for e-commerce.
Yeah, so if we pick those apart, I mean, obviously the first one, you're paying people for reviews. That makes sense. The next one you were saying, it was actually to lower reviews of the competition.
Yeah, so that's called review bombing. That's where sellers will actually engage with reviewers to leave very negative, hurtful reviews for a competitor trying to take their ranking down. What they also do is they will actually upvote the most painful review, like saying like, "Hey, this burnt down my house," something like drastic like that. And you will see it as the first review as you scroll down. So even if they have a majority of good reviews, you see that one damaging review, and literally the drop-offs, the percentages are very, very high in those user sessions. So when they see that review, they drop off immediately.
Yeah, so it's interesting because like all of us who live in this space, and probably most people listening to the podcast, we're very cognizant of that as a whole, that the review manipulation game has been going on for years. What's happened over COVID, just so many more people jumped into the game and then started pulling that lever again. It just made it more complicated than ever. But the reality is the general public, I don't think they realize that's going on at all, right? I know when my parents jump on, right, that they're looking at the ratings and reviews, or the ratings and maybe a couple reviews, and that's it. But they're not realizing, hey, that 90% of these could be fake. They're like, oh, this has got 53,000 reviews. Like, really? You think somebody's going to review that item 53,000 times? But then the last one is just how prevalent is the like bot generated reviews?
Yeah.
I would love to hear that. And then I want to get into some like, wait, how do people handle this or solve for it, or what should people be thinking about?
Yeah, so just to amend something you said, not 90% of the reviews are fake. 90% of consumers will read ratings or reviews before they buy anything online. The general rule of thumb that we've seen, which is very interesting, because this is kind of there's like the 1/3 rule that applies to economics, and it applies here too. The one third of reviews that you're reading online are kind of inauthentic, and there's a breakdown to that number. So we've seen in general, like if we average out all the categories, 30% of the reviews you're seeing are something that you should not depend upon, whether they're human generated or bot generated. And if I go back to a little bit about the history of Fakespot, so I actually launched, the app, out of my bedroom in college when I bought a supplement off Amazon, and it had hundreds of 5-star reviews. So I was like, okay, great, I'm gonna get this in 2 days. The stars look really good. The rating looks good. I didn't even dive into it because I trusted reviews up to that point. And this was, back in 2014, 2015. If, most of the listeners here and viewers will remember that reviews on Amazon used to be very valuable, really, really valuable.
For sure.
Right? And you remember those days, Aaron, like they would tell you everything you needed to know about a product. And it was beyond the point of just looking at the company's marketing material. Like you had the voice of the consumer. It was really valuable. But then something started happening in 2013, 2014, 2015. It actually coincided with the third-party marketplace kind of being full throttle, gear ahead. And the rapid expansion of that for Amazon, that introduced a lot of unethical kind of sellers on the marketplace that wanted to profit beyond all means. And that's when fake reviews started becoming the problem. So that supplement that I bought looked really good. I didn't even double check their rating because I trusted everything on Amazon up to that point. I was a college student. I was like, okay, this is great. So I got it, and it looked like someone made it in a garage. The tape was falling off, and the pills had sawdust from a woodworking shop. Like they just like swooped it into these pills. So I was like, okay, so this can probably damage, my health, my body. And those ratings, there was so many 5-star reviews, it made no sense. Consumers will never leave a good review for this kind of product. So I went back, looked at the reviews, and realized they were either bots writing like, gibberish, or they were consumers that were paid off by the seller. So at this moment, I was like, okay, I can create an AI program that uses a couple models that look at different aspects of reviews and reviewer profiles. And it can then determine if this is a bot-generated review or a human-generated review. And what's interesting here, this is kind of, everyone knows now, when fake news was in vogue and all that stuff, misinformation. What's interesting about the problem we're tackling at Fakespot, it's more on the social fraud level, where there's a psychological element of this piece of text trying to convince you to buy something. But what if that piece of text is a low trust kind of content piece? So that's what's very interesting here. The AI challenge is very, very intriguing. And that's something that, Fakespot, our whole team is really, really passionate about solving. And we're solving this with 20 plus machine learned models that look at different aspects of reviews and reviewer profiles. Now, to answer your question, how many reviews are bot generated? So that number has been increasing year to year. There was a big drop off in 2016. So the luxury that we have with Fakespot is we have data going back to 2015. I designed the system in a way where we collect as much as we can, so we can find out what the trends are, and we can leverage that data to train our models in an unsupervised training method. These training methods, it's where you basically throw all your data at this model, and the model tries to organize it into different and compartmentalize into different groups and clusters. Like, what makes this review part of this group? What makes that other review part of this group? And some of these groups turn to be like bot generated reviews, for example. So that's what's really interesting. So we saw a huge drop off in those bot generated reviews in 2016, 2017. And they're no different to like the Nigerian prince emailing you saying, wire me money right now, $10,000. I got 1 million waiting for you. They were using these generators, text generators that spin text, change the synonyms, change the structure, refactor the text using, back then they used Markov chain generators, which is a probabilistic way of outputting text. It determines the probability of the next word based off the last word and the sentence before it. Now technologies have evolved much more significantly than just a probabilistic way of generating text. So back then, it was there was a high proportion of bot generated reviews. I would say over 50% were being generated by these fake review farms. Because if you think about it, it's much cheaper to generate those reviews than humans. Humans, you need to pay them, you need to PayPal them. This is what's happening right now. You see those little booklets that are in packages. Hey, show me a screenshot of your review and I'll PayPal you $100 or something like this. This is what we're seeing right now on Amazon, this whole Wild West for incentivized reviews. And, people congregate on Facebook groups. We remember last year, Amazon went after the 10,000 or so Facebook groups where they sued them. This was like the big PR announcement, but unfortunately, for the different parties involved, a lot of those admins of those groups were fake accounts. So the problem of fake, kind of is a consequential problem. And today we're seeing, these GPT level models being leveraged for fake review generation. However, it's still increasing. It's not as much as it used to be in 2015, 2016. I would say it's in between 10 to 20% right now. So most of the reviews right now are human generated or promotional review campaigns.
Yeah, I mean, but by this time in a lot of categories and the number one bestsellers and the top ranking ones, yeah, so they've been set in stone with 50,000, right? They've already crested to the point where they're riding high and they don't necessarily have to do a ton more because just naturally at that point in time, you get more sales and therefore you get more ratings and reviews as it is.
That's a very good point.
So it kind of makes sense after a while. If you're afraid you're going to get your hand slapped, you ride it just to the point before you do, and then you back off.
What's interesting about that point? So Amazon actually, if a product has, let's say 100,000 reviews, they will not let you go beyond the point of 1,000, or they keep changing this limit, but at 1,000 reviews, they will not let you scroll to the next page. So if you want to go see reviews like from a couple years ago, let's say it's the 5,000th review, you won't be able to see it. They cap it. They cap that review limit. So you can't paginate into those reviews. So you basically don't know what happened. What's interesting about us at Fakespot is that we're constantly crawling and aggregating the data. So we have the data and we can see what the trajectory of that has been. Have they used bot generated reviews like the 5,000th review back in the day? So most consumers don't know that too. Like, you can't go to the oldest reviews.
What do you say to, like, because this is happening, right now for anybody who gets like review bombed, right? Where they've got to explain to an executive team, that literally they can't do anything about it, or maybe they can, I don't know, but you get review bombed and all of a sudden you're off, the front page, and I mean, it's decreased sales, right? Across the board. You see an immediate drop off. Like, what is step one where they say, hey, well, what are you doing about it? How do brands tackle that? Like, you yank those fake ones down? Like, what's kind of like step 1, 2, 3 is Because I know it's happening all the time at this point in time.
Yeah, you know what's interesting? So we've had outreach from different agencies that offer basically a consultation to companies that are in this problem. However, these agencies used to do more brand protection, copyright protection stuff, trademark protection on Amazon and other platforms. I'm sure you're aware of many of them. What's interesting is those agencies are now evolving to tackle the review fraud aspect of your business. And they're actually offering advice and consultations in the cases of review bombings and things like this, where it's really hard also to explain to leadership that is more old school, like what the problem is, because they may not be, like you mentioned earlier, associated with the fact that there's so many fake reviews happening with volume wise on these different platforms. So these agencies have evolved to actually use the Fakespot, for example. Like I know that a lot of them use Fakespot and utilize our reports to report it to Amazon whenever this kind of problem happens. Unfortunately, most of the cases take a long time to get resolved. By that, I mean either a couple of months to 6 months. That's the kind of time span that we're seeing. The reason we know that is because we actually track review counts and listings that have had review bombings, and we see a significant dip where Amazon came in and deleted those reviews, those review bombing reviews. So we do see them actually applying and purging those fraudulent reviews off listings. So there is a pressure point from these agencies and these brands talking with Amazon. Obviously, they will cater to the biggest companies. The biggest companies that hold the most volume on their platform will be treated with a lot of respect and dignity. So they will look at the problems that they have more so than the smaller brands. They're just in a queue.
What do you think this is then? Like, what's the next level? Like, what are you answering with people all the time right now around this space? Or, is there ever trust restored in the platform? Or do you think we're on this slow ride down with Amazon? And I know we're focusing on Amazon because I think kind of your point, they were the leaders out of the gate with the social trust and affirmation that has skyrocketed. Right. It was just a few, 3-4 years ago, like even like with millennials, it was the most, it was their favorite website and the most trusted. And that seems to be on a downward slide. A lot of it attributed to trusting, right? The reviews that are there. What kind of conversations are you having with brands around where this is going?
That's a really interesting question. I think if you zoom out and look at the macro level of the economy and the market we're in, most companies are prioritizing profits beyond all else. And that means, unfortunately, things like trust gets knocked out into the second, third, priority list. And that's what we're seeing, that it's much more difficult for these brands to actually tackle this problem on these different platforms. They're kind of dependent on marketplaces like Amazon, eBay, and Walmart. We do see Amazon actually reacting to like the fraud. Like, for example, remember last year when they banned a lot of these third-party sellers from different countries around the world that were selling electronics. Those types of sellers were using so many fake reviews for their listings. However, there's still many of them selling on the marketplaces. What's interesting, those sellers actually jumped ship and moved to other marketplaces like Walmart and these different platforms. Those different platforms are not caught up with any of this stuff, unfortunately. They have a much larger problem to tackle than Amazon, for example. Amazon is a little bit ahead of them. But Walmart and these other platforms, they're just not prepared for the amount of fraud that will happen with them. So we are seeing increasing reports from consumers, like, for example, the logistics of a delivery or something like that did not match up at all to the expectations. And if you look at the third-party ratings in certain cases, they're actually really low there, and they're still selling a product on the platform. And there may be a lot of price discrepancies between these platforms, but consumers are still not acquainted with the fact how third-party marketplace models work. And that's unfortunately a lot of the problem that brands are dealing with today, that these platforms are now, laying off a lot of people. So things are just like breaking. Also, like we're seeing bugs being introduced here and there. Like the search broke in November, December. I remember there was a big flaw on these different platforms. Nothing like what's happening on Twitter, for example, where Elon laid off 75% of the people, and things were breaking every hour there. So, but these things will affect those platforms, and they are prioritizing profit and margin beyond anything else. So the companies that are dependent on these marketplaces and that don't have any backup plan will have an issue. If they don't have like fulfillment from their website, like let's say a Shopify store, WooCommerce store, whatever, if there's no backup plan, there's a bit of an issue here.
Yeah. So, where does the Fakespot platform come in then? Would love to hear. You come recommended from a ton of brands. Would love to hear, like, in this solution, what is the solution here, and how do we tackle it, and how should brands be thinking about it?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Fakespot, what it offers today is we offer a very popular Chrome extension, very similar, and like from extensions like you've heard, like Honey, Capital One Shopping, Rakuten, Ebates, these kinds of extensions. You install our extension as a shopper or even a brand, and you now start seeing our features as you're shopping online. We look at the ratings and the reviews, and we give you a grade. The grade is an A to F grade. F means there's a lot of fake reviews in the listing that you're looking at. A means there's a lot of trust in this listing. But we also warn you with Fakespot Guard. That's another product core feature that we have. If the third-party seller in the buy box that has been algorithmically picked by the platform, this applies to, in this case, for eBay, Walmart, Amazon, and Shopify. Fakespot Guard works on all those 4 major platforms. We will tell you if the seller has had a history of fraud. So if they sold counterfeits or diverted products or used products, that's where brands are actually also leveraging our core features. They're looking at what other third-party sellers are in their buy box. Is Amazon prioritizing or gating them instead of these other third-party sellers? Unfortunately for brands, the way the listings are set up on something like an Amazon or Walmart is it looks like it's an official product being sold by the brand. So if it's Dyson, a vacuum cleaner, and there's third-party sellers selling it, there may be a counterfeit version of that vacuum cleaner being sold from a seller, and a consumer may get that and may write a bad review about that whole experience, saying like the vacuum broke within the first hour or something like that. This now damages the reputation of Dyson. I'm just giving a conceived example here. So this utility of what we're providing, shoppers and brands, actually, this helps everyone that is browsing online, looking at the veracity of the content that they're consuming, whether it's the reviews, the ratings. We look at so many different aspects of the e-commerce experience. We're looking at how many upvotes something got, because there's also a problem with fake upvotes, like Most Helpful on these different platforms. So we're trying to leverage as many data points as possible to provide the most trustworthy experience that is most transparent, because these platforms will never be transparent with the users on their platform. Never. It works against them. There's a conflict here. For us, we're balancing that and providing you more data. And that data is helpful for consumers, but it's also very helpful for brands and companies. But it can also, we need to strive for a balance with what we offer, because we do not want the fraudsters to utilize the data that we're using against us. So like by trying to game our system or something like that. So there's a fine balance that we have to maintain cross-platform. So that's another interesting challenge all by its own.
No, it's crazy. It started off, there's transactional fraud. Then we had a big spike in ad fraud across the board. That's hitting and still out there. And then, review fraud. It's like all over the place. It's just fraud is. It's just interesting how everything's evolved over the past, 7-8 years here, and where we sit today. As you think about, like the next step, do you think, does people have as big of a problem on the other marketplaces that are out there? Like, is eBay number 2, or is eBay actually number 1 and Amazon's number 2? Is, maybe it's Walmart, maybe it's Target. Like, where should people be looking besides just Amazon?
Yeah, so here's something that I learned over the last couple of years with Fakespot and with all our experiences. Any review platform will have a problem with fake reviews. All review platforms have the problem. So whether you're reading it on Google, Sephora, Walmart, all of them will have this problem with fake reviews. But each and every single one of them has a different set of their own issues within that segment. So Walmart does on average have a higher incidence of fake reviews than Amazon. But you then have to normalize the data because Walmart has much less volume on reviews than Amazon. And Amazon also now has been pushing one-tap ratings quite significantly. I think that's sweeping the problem under the carpet of fake reviews, right? And it also makes it for consumers like, what does that 5-star rating mean anymore? Like, because there's no text. So they're kind of, I don't know, like reducing the value of the review platform. However, there's also an argument here to say the fake reviews are already reducing the value. Maybe the one-tap rating is definitely sweeping it under the carpet, but consumers want to just see those yellow stars. But again, consumers are going to be, disappointed with the experience if they don't match up to their interpretation of what that rating means. So I think there's a huge problem with this. One platform may do a 10-star rating system, another may do a 5-star rating system. One may do thumbs up, thumbs down. So it's interesting to look at this evolution across all these different platforms, but all of them have a problem with fake reviews. And, like one really interesting case study of this is Netflix. If the reader, like if you remember when you were viewing a Netflix back 5 to 10 years ago, they had a upvote, downvote you could leave on the movies that you streamed. And they actually removed that completely a couple of years ago because they had a huge problem with fake upvotes and downvotes. These studios were buying upvotes and downvotes. So many people don't know that IMDb has a problem with fake ratings too. That's a whole different story. Like there was a Nicolas Cage movie a couple of years ago that it came out. I think it was based in China or was funded by a Chinese studio, and it had a huge problem with it wasn't even launched and it had ratings. That's how funny that whole situation was. And IMDb is owned by Amazon, so it seems like all these different properties have a problem with fake reviews. So my main advice piece would be obviously to be skeptical. Have skepticism when you're looking at these ratings, because you have to keep in mind anyone can sign up and write a review and write a rating in most of these platforms. The verified tag, a lot of people think that's a catch-all, but that catches this problem because that means they actually purchase the product. Unfortunately, that is gamed. That's gamified. You can buy the product and then be PayPal the money by the seller. So you're not really spending your own money. You're getting, compensated for that plus a bonus for writing a review. So many people are doing that, or they get 80% coupon off or 100% coupon off. That used to work a couple of years ago. Now it's like 80% or even lower than that. And then they get compensated for that. So the verified tag also means nothing anymore. And the verified tag is something that we're now seeing being used on Walmart and other platforms that are catching up to this problem. That's what I meant earlier. They're just catching up. There's a play-by-play script here that they're repeating the same mistakes and the same solutions. So it's interesting to see that this, it's very thematic. Like you see this problem kind of being repeated across the board. So if you're buying a high price item on these different platforms, try to research as much as possible. Have a diversified view of the product. If you can get a video review of a normal consumer using this product, like let's say a normal consumer, has 10 subscribers on YouTube, little views or whatever, and they're reviewing the product, they show it to you, they're using it in their video like a vlog. That's the most authentic kind of review that you can get, right? But not most products don't really have this ability to do this or to evoke this kind of content. So have a diversified view of a product and a service, and then obviously use something like Fakespot where we automate this whole verifying the veracity analysis process through our technology, which can save you a lot of time and a lot of heartache and a lot of money.
Yeah, I can see a scenario here because in a way, I don't feel like Amazon's driven to stop it, right? They're driven by ratings and reviews, as we've chatted about. But I almost wonder, if it isn't the opportunity for another retailer, because everybody's like, well, who's going to beat Amazon? Who's going to challenge Amazon? I think some of these other big retailers, if they could get this piece figured out, and really have a marketing play and a push behind, hey, we're the most trusted source now, right? We're more trusted than Amazon is because here's why. I think that's a lever I'd be pulling if I'm a retailer. 100%. I'm doubling down on making sure every single review is legit and then promoting that trust piece, because I agree. I slowly over time, the trust is going down with Amazon. And, if you're another retailer, you can't just let that go. It's your perfect opportunity. At the same time, Amazon's shrinking inventory, people are trying to dial back some media spend. Like right now is a time to ramp it up. Yeah, no, super interesting. Do you agree? I mean, I don't know if you have thoughts there as well, but that seems like a perfect way to go after. Or if you're a direct consumer brand, it doesn't want to sell on Amazon, right? That's
it's very hard, like the natural pieces of a transaction, like you mentioned, like for example, brand loyalty. Very hard to see that on reviews on Amazon, for example, or Walmart. You don't see that as you used to in the old days, where you see a big brand following brand loyalty. Like if you go to a D2C site, let's say pots and wares and stuff like that, you will see a really strong brand loyalty factor in their reviews. Not saying that they don't use fake reviews, they could be, but there's a brand loyalty aspect to it. An insight here that I can give is, I think the companies and brands that are like singular care much more about the problem of fake reviews than the platforms that have multiple brands selling on them. That's what's interesting here. Walmart could totally do something differentiating here and say, hey, we have the most trusted reviews, but they're not enlightened to this problem. They care more about onboarding as many third-party sellers, increasing those margins, increasing the volume of transactions and stuff like that. And that's at the cost of trust. I would say you need to solve the problem of trust at the beginning rather than at the end. At the end, there's a whole mountain of problems that goes against you. You cannot climb this mountain. It's so steep. After building that whole mountain through the volume and third-party sellers, it actually works against you. So the problem of trust needs to be solved at the start. That's where the unique innovation can happen. And that's something that, I've looked at and investigated deeply over the years. This is it's kind of my passion now for my career, building technology that brings trust. And I would also say on a much larger level, Aaron, the internet has been deteriorating in trust over the last couple of years. If you look at the, like Web 1.0, or if you remember, there were bulletin boards and stuff like that, right? Like Usenet and whatever. There was a lot of valuable information there. People were just casually exchanging thoughts, novel ideas, and things like that. And obviously, there's a novelty factor to this. There's so many ways that a concept can be repeated on the internet. There's so much garbage now. There's so much noise. There's a whole ocean of information, but there's a little sea of trusted information. And that's where I would say consumers need to, and brands need to navigate towards. You want to navigate towards that sea, away from that ocean of garbage. Unfortunately, that ocean of garbage is collecting a lot of information, and they're using their scale, their flywheel effect to generate more reviews and more content. But the problem of fake content is engrossing and encompassing on the internet, in my opinion, and in the opinion of our team here. We're actually worried about this. I actually think the next couple decades, the biggest problem humanity will challenge is this problem of fake content. And I'm talking about like major league political, a war could start from a deep fake video. Someone could lose an election because of a generated content piece. You can emulate voices, you can emulate images, you can emulate videos. The problem can become really, really severe. And reviews are one component of this problem, but reviews entail money, a transaction behind it. So it is a very important problem also, because you're spending money based off this review. How many of us have just looked at one review and we're like, okay, I'm going to buy this product right now because this review was great, right? Or how many of us have avoided buying a product because we looked at the review and we're like, okay, this is bad, I'm avoiding this, like the plague. This applies even to your next vacation. If you're looking at TripAdvisor or Yelp, and you're trying to look at these different hotels, a lot of hotels are using fake reviews too. And that's something that most consumers are now waking up to. They're waking up to this fact that, hey, I can't trust what I read online anymore, or, look.
Yeah, that's so true. I don't think, I think that the major thing that'll happen is over the next, 3 to 5 years, there will be that awakening from the general consumer because they'll been burned enough times, right? They'll be burned enough times. They're like, there's something inherently wrong with this system. Who do I go to trust? That's the reality I see.
100%. And, like we're seeing the opposite right now. Like there's an opportunity for platforms like Wish to exist. Wish has the biggest problem with fake ratings and fake reviews. They're selling the cheapest products of their kind, and they have a huge problem with fake reviews. But they can exist in this world right now because not 100% of consumers are looking at this fact that, hey, I can't trust these ratings. I can't trust this platform. But slowly and steadily, that number of consumers is increasing because, like you said, there's just a number of times you can get burnt online. And one bad transaction, let's say you spent $1,000 on, let's say some audio equipment or whatever, and it came down and it was a complete piece of crap. And the ratings were like 4.8 star average. You're like, what is going on here? I can't trust this anymore. So we're going to see also people going back to brick and mortar stores. Like that's, I think, an interesting data point here. And that's something, you mentioned at the beginning here in the interview that when we were all in lockdowns, e-commerce exploded in growth, and we saw an explosion in fraud, fake masks, fake sanitizers, fake gloves, or low quality versions of those products being sold. And all of them were peddled with fake ratings. And that's the thing that caught many consumers. Consumers were leaving reviews like, hey, I bought a fake mask here, did not even work, and I got an infection from it. So you see, this problem the consequence can be you getting a health effect out of it. So that's what we're seeing right now. People want to go and, feel a product, look at it visually in reality versus anything else. But then if you throw into the mix AR and VR, which is coming, and that's going to be a new way of shopping, where do reviews come into that play? Because reputation is going to be very important, even in that world of AR, VR. You need to decide what you're going to buy, and you're going to look at an image of something, of a product. You will need another trust factor, and usually that trust factor is the rating.
It's interesting too, just kind of you're talking about, brick and mortar in store, because there's been this huge trend for the buyer. So it used to be you would walk into a store, if it made it on shelf, right? It'd been vetted out multiple times, right? Maybe even the factory visited, right? Yep. Before anything would make it onto the store shelf. And so you could really trust what was there. And if not, you could return it to the store. Then we had, with e-commerce popping up, then we had a lot of buyers, their jobs got a little bit easier from the standpoint of they could just jump out to Amazon. They could take a look at the ratings and reviews, like, oh, awesome. Well, here's validation right here. This is the top selling item in the category, 850, 4.9 star reviews. Yeah, this is worth gambling and putting on the shelf because look at people love it. You can't do that anymore. Right? Yep. I mean,
that's exactly right. Like, those products were socially validated by whoever is controlling the purchasing of inventory at, like, let's say your local store. And that's something that we're not seeing in e-commerce. E-commerce, the digital space in general is very cold, very robotic. And that's why reviews are so critical. And when you look at reviews, there's a different voice to each review. It makes it, more human, right? The transaction more human, as opposed to just a listing with an image, with a description, and then buy now. Without reviews, that looks very, very cold. And now if you throw into the mix that these, GPT generated reviews sound very human, the problem just grows. But you're right. You're absolutely right. The old days where you went to a Sears and you looked at a product, which, Sears is dead now because of Amazon. But if you went to a Sears and you looked at that Kenmore fridge, those fridges last 30 years, and they've been validated, and there's a 10-year warranty on them. You remember those days? I mean, those days are kind of gone.
Yeah. What are you most excited about over the next, few years here? What gets you up in the morning and most excited?
Well, solving this problem of fake content. That's something that is something, we're incredibly passionate about, because I think this is going to be, like, again, the problem for the next century, not even decades, that we're going to have to combat. I think even if we live on Mars, we have a colony on Mars, we're still going to have a problem with fake content, whether it's, the news, the comment, a rating, a review. We will have this problem, and we need to solve that problem if we want to evolve as a civilization. So that's something that I'm very, very passionate about. And we want to build the technology that combats this, that elucidates the problems, and provides that whole transparency. And we're providing this for free for shoppers today. If you go to fakespot.com, you just do a one-click install, you add it to your browser, and we will let you know if you're buying from fraudulent sellers. If you use these different applications like Honey and Rakuten, they will recommend a lower base seller, but that seller may be a counterfeit seller. They don't detect and look at the trustworthiness of that seller. We do that. So I would say we are an evolution on these coupon applications. And that's something that, makes me very excited. This evolutionary approach to e-commerce, making e-commerce better for Amazon, for Walmart, for eBay, for Sephora. I mean, eBay has had this problem since day one. Since day one of launch to now, and they're doing this authentication, eBay authentication guarantee and all that stuff, where there's a middleman now in between you and the seller, if you're the buyer, and they authenticate the product, let's say a watch or a bag, a luxury handbag. They will authenticate it and send it to you. If it's a fake, they will send it back to the seller, and the transaction is canceled. So these platforms are working in different ways to do it, but I would say AI is going to be the critical piece here, and consumer transparency is going to be a critical piece. And also, to add to your, to add an answer to your question, there's going to have to be a little bit of government involvement into this. Fake reviews are illegal. Compensated reviews, where you pay someone to write a review, are also illegal. But there are many gray areas that are being exploited by these different platforms.
I've been picking your brain for the past, 45 minutes or so. What's any questions, for me? And thanks for letting me pick your brain.
Absolutely. And thank you for having me. So what in your conversations with the brands that you're speaking with, what has been the problem in relation to reviews and ratings that you've been hearing often? We talked about review bombing and what the solution to that is. What has been like a recurring theme, and what have been the trends that you've been seeing over the last, let's say, 3 years since we, came out of the lockdowns?
Well, I think new item launch has been a huge one. So this idea that it's, once you have somebody that's in, a position of, 50,000 reviews or something ridiculous, right? Once they've locked themselves at the top, then you're fighting for something lower than that, which is fine. But how do you get the most out of reviews as quickly as possible? So how do you get legitimate reviews, especially from, large brands? How do you get legitimate above board reviews when you can't pay anybody for them? And how do you make them meaningful? And how do you get them as quickly as possible? And one of the hardest things, like if we just take Amazon, for example, you launch a new item, you're on page 5,000. They're not taking, inventory, a huge stake in inventory in. There's no ratings or reviews currently on the product, and therefore paid media is hard. And so they're trying to solve, that's probably the biggest issue, is just what can we do? What can we do to get a new item launched? That's kind of top of mind, because in a lot of cases, I think they don't realize that there's solutions to taking, bad reviews down, or it's hard, or it's complicated. And quite honestly, they've got 155 other things on their plate right now, the swing back to retail has a lot of a lot of these huge advancements, or, plans for growing an e-com team are being brought back. There's still having a big e-commerce business run by a small e-commerce team.
Right.
They just got 450 other things they got to do ahead of this one to try to tackle it. The other one is, how do you explain, it's the upward education across everything in digital, not just the reviews, but like the review bombings and trying to explain upward what's going on, but it's everything around, what should my organization look like? What should retail media strategy be like? Because most, executives right now, if you're at a traditional brand that was primarily brick and mortar, you're still having a hard time. A lot of us still have a hard time grasping the complexity of e-commerce and what's
Right.
been asked of retail media teams. And so, yeah, that's probably the biggest stuff that's come up over and over again over the past 3 years. A lot of it's exasperation, right? Like that, I don't know what you want me to do now, right? And they know 3 months from now, there'll be something completely new they have to go tackle. So,
Right. I sympathize with a lot of the brands. I mean, it's very overwhelming, whether you're looking at reviews, whether you're looking at first day launch, like you mentioned, and then you look at e-commerce ads. We're seeing increasing fraud on that.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're right. And that's it. Exactly. Exactly. You feel for them. But again, thanks for coming on. I mean, you're part of the solution, just the education that we try to do here on the Digital Deep Dive. And that's kind of my mission with this, is to continuously put, smart people who are doing really great things for brands and helping them out, getting really great brands on here who are doing really great things, thought leaders to help us learn collectively as a whole. And so, and you're part of that. And so really appreciate it. And so, and with that, I think we're right here at time for the end of this episode of the Digital Deep Dive. Saoud, again, thanks for all your time today. Thanks for being open to answering all these questions. And thanks for being such a great part of the network. All right. Well, take care. Stay safe. Thanks, everybody. That's it for this episode.